All right, great.
All right, great. Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for having MassMEP to this webinar. My name is Christy Grignon. I'm the Director of Business Development at MassMEP. I've been here for about 9 years, and I have with me my colleague, Bill Goldstucker, and we're going to tag team this presentation for you all this morning. So, Maddie, if you don't mind moving to the next slide, we have a video just to share how we've actually worked with Greentown Labs in Forge in the past with a company. So we can go ahead and play this to start. Oh, and Maddie, I don't think we can hear the volume on that.
Okay, I can hear the volume. Let me see if I do this, if it works better. Can you hear that?
No, still not hearing it.
On my end, you can. I'm not sure if anyone has any ideas.
If you go to your, I believe you have to make sure you're playing the volume through your computer. But that's, if we can't, if you want to go ahead and play it for just a little bit so you can see it, I can talk through it a little bit.
Sure, let me.
Yeah, this is a company called Silverside Detectors. They came out of Greentown Labs, and they make a device that can actually detect nuclear. Laura and David are probably better at this than I am, but nuclear sensing. The story behind this is the way that we worked with Greentown Labs to get Silverside to get into production. They have a facility now in Cambridge, and they're doing extremely well. They've been around now, I believe, since before 2015. And this is a video that we can send these slides out to everybody and that you can watch on your own. But it was just a great example of startup to production and how we all work together. So Maddie, if we can go ahead and move on to the next slide. We'll just tell you a little bit about MassMEP and who we are. So we are a nonprofit. We've been around since 1996, and we are part of a larger organization called NIST-MEP, which is the National Institute of Standards and Technology. So not only do we have an MEP here in Massachusetts to help the startups in Massachusetts, there's an MEP center in every state and Puerto Rico. So it gives us access to over 1,300 manufacturing experts across the country for support for startups and manufacturers. On staff, we have decades upon decades of experience. We have 6 business development advisors, each with over 30 years of experience. And we have 9 project managers that help you through the process and the programming that we've put in place. And if we can jump to the next slide. This talks about our service offerings, a complete overview of management strategies, workforce development, and innovative growth strategies. So we address issues and find opportunities in key areas. We set roadmaps for growing sustainable and establishing best practices. We determine a custom training program. We work hand in hand with you to really implement what the training is. And we find opportunities in key areas to grow your business. And if we jump over to the next slide, I'm going to turn it over to Bill.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much. My name is Bill Goldstucker, and I'm a business advisor with MassMEP. And we're really passionate about startup companies. And we have a lot to offer in the sense that we can help you with your new product development, market assessment, strategic positioning, manufacturability of your product. And also on the financing side, we can do investment analysis, financial viability. We can recommend ways of monetizing your product or your service. From a management's perspective, we can do enterprise assessment, look at manufacturing, lean manufacturing, do implementation recommendations on the management part of the equation. And also, we can work on the implementation part of it, supply chain, value stream mapping, contract manufacturing. So it's a really holistic approach to startups, from the product itself to the financing portion of it, to implementing the manufacturing of the product, and how to manage the day-to-day of startups. And those are really valuable services that many startups are longing for. So this is some of the examples of what we do in those four corners. In the new product development, manufacturability, we look for ways of those products being designed in a way that they can be manufactured in a more efficient way. Quality management, supply chain planning, market assessment, marketing plan development, prototyping. And on the management side, we start from the very basic business writing, leadership growth, leadership purpose and focus, leadership training, management consulting, P&L management. How do you handle your P&L? How do you handle cash flow? From the financing side, we can help you write a business plan and assist you on getting grants, and assist you into presenting to potential investors and planning your cash. What is your cash exit strategy? And this is something that investors look into it. And so on the implementation side, sales behavior, how can we create a sales organization that sells our product? Procurement and contract negotiations, revenue growth and plan development, value stream mapping, manufacturing scouting, consulting on supply chain and contract manufacturing. So if you see, we have a series of services for the startup companies to make sure that they're successful and go to the next step. Go ahead.
Yeah, I could jump in on this one. These are just some additional trainings that we do have. Each one of these trainings is within the Workforce Training Fund program, which I'll get into that in a couple of slides. But we have programs such as Agile Manufacturing, Design for Manufacturability, Value Engineering Training, and Technology-Driven Market Intelligence. We could go to the next slide, Maddie. This here talks a little bit about the Manufacturing USA Institutes. This slide's a little old. There's actually 16 institutes now. And in addition to that, they're bringing on 3 more institutes that are based around semiconductors. We house 5 of them here in Massachusetts, and those are the first 5 that you see in that list of logos. That's AFOA, Advanced Fabrics, AIM Photonics, NextFlex, ARM, and Nimble. These are really important. A lot of these come out of the DoD, and they're funded by the DoD or by MassMEP. And there's a lot of opportunities for collaboration with startups, with contract manufacturers, and additional funding opportunities that go with these as well. Next slide. Wanted to get into a little bit of the funding opportunities that are here in Massachusetts. So this comes out of the Commonwealth Corporation, and it is the Workforce Training Fund program. This is a general grant program opportunity, anywhere from $10,000 to $200,000 over a 2-year period. And this is specifically for workforce training. This can be a company of any size that is eligible for this, as long as you have a certificate of good standing here in the state of Massachusetts. Next slide. This is the Express Grant Program. This is a program that comes out of Commonwealth Corp and the Workforce Training Fund program as well. This one is geared more for smaller companies, for startups such as yourself. This is up to $20,000, and you can apply for this each year. The trainings need to be right around $3,000 per person in order to qualify for the Express Grant Program. And this can have trainings such as marketing trainings in it, that agile manufacturing and the design for manufacturability are all in this Express Grant program. We've also worked with Forge on consortium grants where we bring a lot of startups together and put together programs that they all need, such as lean programs or the design for manufacturability. Makes it more cost effective and easier to send people to the training. Next slide. This is out of the Center for Advanced Manufacturing. This is the MassMEP training. There's actually one open right now. It's up to $30,000. This is a one-to-one match. So whatever you apply for, you have to match dollar for dollar with. So there's one out right now that's for specifically cybersecurity for hardware for your cyber needs. So that one's up to $30,000, and they will be putting one out in the next couple of months. That is the one that you see here, which is up to $200,000 for capital equipment. Again, a one-to-one match. So for every dollar you ask for, you've got to put in a dollar in as well. And you need to have a nonprofit that you work with in order to apply for this grant that will manage this grant. So MassMEP has managed many of these grants and more than happy to support anybody when it opens up. Fingers crossed, don't want to give a date, but we're hoping right around the March timeframe. And I believe that's it. So we breezed through in 15 minutes and we're hoping for some questions at the end, but we'll turn it over to Forge.
Hi, I'm Laura Teicher. I'm the Executive Director at Forge. And thank you to MassCEC for having us here today, and also to MassMEP and Mass Ventures for their ongoing partnership and collaboration. Great to have us all here today. So Forge is here to help innovators move from prototype to deployment. We do this with a unique focus on product development, manufacturing, and supply chain education, support, and connections. Essentially, we help you around the physical build and anything you need around the physical build of your product. We're the sister organization of Greentown Labs, as was sort of referenced earlier. And because of that, we have helped hundreds of emerging climate tech companies, not just from Greentown, but also from across the state, around the country, and even around the world. And we're uniquely positioned to help entrepreneurs like you as a result of our startup first mission and track record, over 100 years of experience in manufacturing, supply chain management, and product development within our team, and our ability to make warm introductions to our curated network of hundreds of expert, innovation-friendly manufacturers and suppliers. We can go to the next slide, please. So a little bit about the impact of this work. We've been doing this for a while, since 2015. We've now served over 750 hard tech startups since 2015. And across all those companies and all that time, we've sustained an over 87% survival rate. And at least 20% of these companies we have worked with are in full mature production today. This really underscores that help with your product development and making right decisions in design and scaling manufacturing is really crucial to preserving your runway and to achieving successes. If you can go to the next slide, please. So at Forge, we provide a mixture of education and facilitated connections to the regional experts you need to scale your product. We will not charge you for that help. And importantly, we hold a philosophy that if you can invent it locally, you should be empowered to make it locally. So I want to talk a little bit about why this matters, because it can be overlooked and it can be especially powerful in your early scaling process. So there are a number of unique competitive advantages that you can unlock. These include the ability to drive down the road and see your product come off the production line, communicate in person, discuss new strategies, and just really having that front row seat. Importantly, there's also alignment with the testing and certification requirements for US markets, IP protections that you're probably looking for. And if you intend to engage with the DOE or the DoD, This will help you align with their domestic supply chain requirements. Importantly, in recent years, we've seen nearshoring trend in risk and cost management efforts in the face of the long lead times and global supply chain disruptions, but also there are often unexpected savings in management overhead, shipping fees, and tariffs. The last thing I want to say on this subject is you're all climate oriented and here on a mission, is that when you localize production, not only do you tap into all those competitive advantages, but you actually reduce the carbon footprint of making your product because you're eliminating all of that shipping back and forth across the seas. Now, we know that not everything you do will be localized, but we're here to help get you ready to scale up your production and then connect with the local experts you need as desired. And with that, I'm going to pass the mic to my colleague and senior program manager at Forge, David Thompson. David has personally and individually met with and helped over 300 startup companies. He'll be the person you reach out to at Forge for help. And he's going to talk in a little more detail about our programming and how we do what we do. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. So as Laura mentioned, Forge's kind of main positioning within the ecosystem is first and foremost an educator, and secondly, a connector to help startups overcome their product development related challenges. So on the education side of things, what that looks like tactically is we hold various types of meetings and webinars to help startups get a better understanding of their specific challenges, and also to help them to uncover the right roadmap for them to overcome those challenges and continue on through their technical development. So we have what are called product development sessions, which are essentially one-to-one consulting meetings that we have with our companies to really kind of assess their needs and help to connect them with the right resources. We also have workshops and meetups that are geared towards helping startups and innovators, particularly those that don't necessarily have a manufacturing background, to kind of get up to speed in terms of what are the key considerations when working with contract manufacturers, what are the key considerations when scaling your product. Oftentimes what we find with a lot of innovators is, while they're experts within their field, within their technology, sometimes engaging with manufacturers can be a challenge. Startups and manufacturers often speak two different languages. So our educational workshops and meetups are really geared to helping to make sure that these startups are empowered with the right information to have meaningful and fruitful connections with their supply chain network. To get some more kind of hands-on exposure to manufacturers, we also host factory tours, which are a great way to kind of see the factory floor, see these various manufacturing processes in action. And then beyond that too, we also have a library of workbooks on our website, which folks can look through. And then finally, another kind of key pillar of our educational resources is we have innovation advisors who are essentially startup consultants that have worked with hundreds of startups before on a paid engagement, and they're willing to work with Forge startups for an hour-long conversation completely free of charge. So it's really a great way to get some great strategic kind of advice in your product development. So once startups kind of have a better understanding of the manufacturing environment and their roadmap as a whole, again, we act as a connector to specific manufacturers and the supply chain local to that startup. So firms in our network include folks like design and prototyping firms, all the way up to full large-scale production firms like assembly houses, injection molding companies, etc. One thing that Laura mentioned is all of these suppliers are vetted to work with innovators. So that's a huge thing in terms of making sure that the referrals that we make are really fruitful. We only connect you with folks that kind of meet your budget, that meet your desired profile. So it's a really great way to save a lot of time and in terms of avoiding cold calling and things like that. One thing to really highlight about our supply chain network is there's over 500 regional manufacturers in that network. So definitely a lot of folks to choose from. And one thing to really highlight for the startups in the audience is you'd be surprised in terms of how much specialty there is in your backyard here in Massachusetts. For example, over 75% of the contracts and connections that we've made have been within 100 miles of that startup. So there's really a lot of great resources here in your backyard. And as Laura mentioned, connecting with these local suppliers is a great way to kind of build those face-to-face relationships and ultimately improve the scaling of your product. So we can go on to the next slide here. We'll be highlighting some of the companies that we've worked with. So just to give you kind of an idea of how different startups engage with Forge, for example, Florent, they're a startup that is developing a new type of ultra capacitor using hemp. They approached Forge because they needed connections to folks that could do some performance testing for their ultra capacitor. And they also needed process engineers because they were making their material in a completely new way and looking to scale that up in a new factory environment that they're developing. So we hope to connect them actually with folks literally within the same building as them that they weren't aware of. So it's, again, a great example of the resources in your backyard that you might not be aware of. Since those connections, they've been able to overcome some of their challenges and are currently in the process of developing a factory in South Deerfield. Hala is the next one to highlight here. They're developing systems that are essentially the brains of the grid. Essentially, you install these small systems across the grid to monitor distribution of electrical power and also manage disruptions. Essentially, you can imagine if there's a big snowstorm and a bunch of power lines are out, by deploying these different systems, different municipalities can see where energy is being pulled from, so that way they can better manage times of crisis like that. They originally came to us out of MIT with just the software, so they knew how to monitor these disruptions, but they didn't have the physical component that they actually needed to install across these different geographies. So what they did with us is we helped to connect them with an electronics contract manufacturer that helped to actually develop their physical units. And they've since scaled up with that manufacturer and actually have been recently acquired by Kohler as a testament of the traction that they've gotten. One final startup to highlight here is Gen H. They're developing modular, rapidly deployable hydropower systems to electrify dams. The vast majority of dams across the US are not electrified. Think like cranberry bogs or just small dams to avoid flooding. A lot of those are not electrified. So what they're developing is these really kind of easy to install modular systems to help generate some power from those smaller dams across the United States. When they approached us, they had a functioning prototype, and they actually applied for Forge product development funding, which is non-dilutive funding that startups can apply for. And Gen H won, and then they were able to apply $10,000 towards further refining their design. So that way they could pilot their technology across New England and California. So that's a really other kind of great way that startups have leveraged Forge to help scale their product. One thing to highlight for the startups in the audience here today is that we actually currently have a product development grant tranche open. It'll be open until mid-February, and it's applicable for any clean tech company up to $10,000 worth of funding. Again, it's non-dilutive, and it's really meant to be applied towards the progression of your technology, whether that be further refining your prototype, acquiring certain components or things like that. But I can follow up with Maddie to make sure that you guys have access to that application link. In addition to these success stories, we also simply love highlighting hardware startups in general. And we host 2 showcase events each year where we highlight about 20 companies and have about 250 or so attendees. So it's really a great way to highlight the local innovation happening here in Massachusetts. So if you'd like to participate in that, or if you'd like to attend, please feel free to reach out to me directly. I'll be sharing my email here in a moment. And it's completely free of charge to exhibit. You don't necessarily have to have a direct connection with Forge. So if you'd like to kind of get your name out there in the ecosystem, please feel free to reach out to me about that opportunity. So next slide, please. We can kind of get into how to get engaged with Forge. So the best way to stay up to date with all of our opportunities, whether it be upcoming events or grants or anything like that, would be through our newsletter. If you'd like to learn more about Forge, the best way to do so would be to sign up for a product development session, which are, again, kind of those 30-minute consultation sessions that we have with each of our companies. You can sign up for that via our website, or you can reach out to me directly at david@forgeimpact.org, and we can kind of get a meeting scheduled between us. I'd also encourage you guys to check out our website for our workbooks and other resources like that. But that is the conclusion of kind of the Forge pitch. So really appreciate you guys taking the time. Appreciate MassCEC and MassMEP for sharing the stage with us today. So if any questions come up, please feel free to reach out to me at david@forgeimpact.org. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I am going to just talk really quickly about MassCEC, just like 2 slides. Here's my contact information. If you have any questions that you want to talk about more after this, definitely reach out to me. Always happy to hop on a call and talk about our programs. So for those who are unaware, MassCEC, we're a quasi-government agency whose mission is to accelerate the clean energy and climate solution innovation that's needed to meet the state's climate goals and advance Massachusetts' position as an international climate leader, while also growing the state's clean energy economy. So the work that we do, so we provide workforce development training, market development, and innovation support. So my team, specifically the Tech to Market team, has a few different grant programs, but I'm also happy to connect you with folks on the workforce development team or investment team if you think that would be beneficial for you. So I won't go through all of this in too much. We'll share these slides so that you can read more about them, but we have a few programs running from TRL 2 to 8 that provides non-dilutive grants for mostly Massachusetts-based startups and academic researchers. We have one program that is also for out-of-state folks if they have a pilot in Massachusetts. Yeah, the grants range from $75,000 to $350,000 to kind of get you to the next point of commercialization that you're hoping to achieve. So definitely reach out to us if you have any questions about this, but I don't want to spend too much time talking about us and definitely want to leave some time for questions. I also believe Priya, if you're here, if you want to quickly say hello and talk a little bit about Mass Ventures.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining. So very quickly, Mass Ventures also plays a critical, we fill a critical gap in the state's innovation ecosystem. We provide venture capital, grants, and business advice to founders who often do not have access to this support. And we stay with you right from a very early stage until you need us. And so this is just a quick glimpse into the programming we offer. And all of this is on our website, so definitely take a better look at any of these programs and see if they work for you, and feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to talk to you about any of them. Thank you.
Thanks, Priya. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And if you have any questions, please put them into the Q&A. Yeah. Okay, we had one question. I think it was for Forge or MassMEP. It was, do you have a pool of potential entrepreneurs or CEOs looking for their next opportunity?
I can answer from the Forge side. Unfortunately, that's not something we offer.
And I hate to echo Laura on this as well, but that is not something MassMEP offers either.
no other questions yet. We can give it a minute in case anyone is typing out a question. If not, you will circulate these slides to everyone who registered for the event, and all of our contact information is also on there. All right, we just got one more. Does MassMEP offer grants to early stage companies focused on R&D? What resources are available for small businesses who are still in the R&D stage? That also could have been for MassCEC too. I think there might have been a typo in the name, but I can answer for the MassCEC side. Yeah, we have one grant program called Catalyst and DICES that is for TRL 2 to 4. So that's mostly focusing on the research and development of the technology and kind of getting it to that like first prototype stage. So that is definitely a good program for that. Yeah, I would say that's probably the best program. It's Catalyst.
If while we wait for any input here from the MassMEP side, I'll just hop in and say that the Forge product development grant that David mentioned, the current open tranche, it's not a huge amount of money, but you are qualified if you have at least an early looks like or works like prototype. So depending on where you are in that R&D scale, this open tranche of clean tech product development funding may be of interest.
And just from the MassMEP side, no, we do not. We actually don't offer any grant funding through MassMEP. We offer support to write grants moving forward. So we don't offer any funding for R&D.
So another question, can you talk more about the mass manufacturing accelerated program? What capital equipment would be eligible?
Absolutely. So it is all capital equipment that is eligible. They do have a matrix as to, you know, what brings you to the top of what they're looking for to fund, which would be more through technology and industry 4.0. So they're looking for a lot of automation, additive manufacturing, but we have seen just about any type of capital equipment that has been funded. So if you have something in mind, on our end, it's Lisa Oden, who helps support manufacturers and startups to write these grants. And we'd be more than happy to walk through what it is that you're looking for and put that grant application together for you. As I stated before, it is up to $200,000, and it is a 1-to-1 match on that capital equipment.
All right, great. And Christy, I think we got a follow-up for you. So in addition to grants, how do we start working with MassMEP?
Thank you for that question. That's a great question. You can pick up the phone, give us a call, email us, and just voice what your concerns are and what your needs are. Like I said, we have 6 business development advisors and 9 project managers. So we would put you in touch with whoever has the most expertise, which is probably going to be Bill in this instance, who works with a lot of startups. But you can get started with us by just a quick conversation, understanding your needs. We can direct you to whatever funding sources are available and come in and do an assessment of your needs and get started.
All right, and we just got another. So for the workforce development grant, up to $200,000, It seems like that is for bigger established businesses. If a couple of startups came together to apply for that, would that be acceptable?
Yes, that is what we've done with Forge in the past. We call it a consortium grant that goes through the general grant process. So if there were like 5 or 6 startups that wanted to work together on that, we would put that application together for you and move forward through the process and then set up the trainings with the facilitators.
All right, we have no other questions yet. I'll
Just,
wait.
just
Hold
Maddie,
on.
wanted to circle back on the
Mhm.
question about the pool of CEOs. While we don't have a pool of CEOs, but we could provide temporary management services. So we could be, MassMEP could be a bridge between the startup coming to market and finding their correct CEO or GM or president. So we could bridge that gap.
All right, I'm not seeing any other questions. Give it a few seconds, and then if not, we can wrap up early. All right, well, thank you everyone for joining. Definitely be in touch if you have any questions for any of us. We're happy to chat. Oh, we did just get another question actually. For the Forge grant, how early is too early to be competitive?
So the Forge grant is a little bit unusual. Earliness doesn't really impact competitiveness as long as you have an initial prototype. What we really look for is that you have a very clearly defined product development challenge and an appropriate plan to address it that you can use the money for. And again, the money's non-dilutive, so we only ask that you kind of report back the impact numbers to us for that money. But it really comes down to, can this money substantially move forward your product development versus who's the most seasoned company in the pool? David, is there anything you'd add to that?
Yeah, I would just definitely emphasize that when reviewing these applications, what we're looking at most is kind of the impact that the funds will have on the company. So again, it's really about kind of narrowing down the scope of something that $10,000 would be able to make a significant dent in. So there's not necessarily a too early, but it's more so about identifying the right project for this particular size of funds.
Yeah, and compellingly conveying how it'll help you hit the next critical milestone.
And there's a follow-up to that question. So asking if prototype means that there's already a physical product, or would it also be if there's a well-defined concept and a team ready to move it forward?
The former, but I'll give a little extra pro tip here. It does not have to be fancy. We've worked with companies that have, screwed together pieces of wood to demonstrate how they think the physical build will look. You have to have started to conceptualize it in the physical world beyond the drawings, but it does not have to be anywhere near your final prototype. It can be a true alpha looks like or works like.
Right. And just one thing to add there too is that, I imagine many different startups on this call are coming to us with very different types of technologies that they're looking to commercialize. So we're very cognizant that, let's say you're developing a new nuclear power plant. you're not gonna really have that ready to go day one. So just as Laura mentioned, it's really important to have some sort of proof of concept, but again, it doesn't need to be a fully kind of commercialized unit. And ultimately, that's really kind of the idea behind these grants, is that you would kind of bring some like initial proof of concept that has some challenges with it. And these funds are to kind of address those challenges and to help you overcome the roadblocks that you're facing with your current iteration of your product.
One more point of clarification. Forge does require, at least an early prototype for anything other than our general educational offerings at this time, but we do engage all the way up through full commercial scale and deployment. So if you're hearing all this talk about how early you can be and thinking you're too far along for product development funding, that's not the case at all. You might need, a new bioreactor or piece of machinery to hit the next scale of production, and this would be applicable to that as well.
Okay. All right, well, thank you, everyone. And yeah, I think that's the end for today. We have no more questions, but as I stated before, definitely reach out and we will be sending the slides over soon for your reference.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.